So I want to start my message to you this morning the way I usually begin a sermon on the second day of Rosh Hashanah here in the main sanctuary, which is by thanking a few people. First, Rabbi Steinhardt, this year especially for his steady, creative, and forward-thinking leadership in these most challenging of times. To Cantor Fishman and Cantor Davidoff for your extraordinary work and partnership. To Helene Ballin and our entire exceptional and very hard-working professional staff. To Ed Sofer and our dedicated board of trustees, and especially to you, the members of B'nai Torah congregation, who have declared by your participation, your support, and your renewals that you believe in this place, whether we can all be together in these four walls or not. I am and remain very grateful to all of you. Looking back on it, I really should have known. I should have known 2020 was going to be different, and let's face it, not in a good way. We rarely travel in the winter. I don't like to leave Florida in the winter. I like to soak up all the good weather between December and March and keep it in mind during the sultry, dripping humidity of the rest of the year. But this past New Year's would be different. Our daughter wanted to go see a friend, so we decided to make a family trip of it. She would go to her friend, and the rest of us would go to ours for a New Year's of catching up with people we love, but don't see that often. A few days before our flights, we got the call that everyone dreads receiving more than any other. The friend we were going to see, a husband, father, and rabbi to his community, had died while on a family vacation in Hawaii. So instead of going to see our dear friend, Rabbi Adam Feldman and his family for a celebratory New Year's, I changed my flights to attend his funeral in an overflowing sanctuary and ballroom of the congregation he ably led, the Princeton Jewish Center. With 5 colleagues, I carried his casket out of the sanctuary to the waiting hearse, and from the hearse to his grave. And New Year's Day and week was spent in long Shiva visits, telling stories and solidifying memories of a truly wonderful person and role model to so many. I had last seen him in October, and it is a good story. As I hope you recall, we held our first B'nai Torah golf outing at that time. Adam was my first golfing partner. As I like to say, he had clubs and I had a car, so we were a good match. He was pretty good. I was and remain pretty bad. I called him about a month before the event and I said, Adam, come down. It will be a really great day. He said, no, I can't do it. Got too much going on up here. Have fun, and I'll be thinking about you, that kind of thing. Of course, he, together with another golfing friend from New York, surprised me and did come, having been in cahoots with our chair people since well before I invited him. I don't think I've ever been more surprised in my life, and it represented an aspect of who he was, and it is my last and one of my best memories of him. Don't worry. This will not be a Rosh Hashanah eulogy. And no morbid pun intended, if I did that, he would kill me. But we are supposed to look back on the year that was and use it as a springboard into the year that has just begun. And that is how my secular year began. And while personal loss, especially untimely loss, continues to weigh us down and becomes an unwelcome part of our own stories, this year quickly descended into something beyond what most of us have ever experienced or even allowed ourselves to imagine. And it continues to dominate our days, and I'm guessing sometimes keeps us up at night. It is rare that we can look around the world and say everyone has had a similar life-altering, even life-threatening challenge to face. Much of these holidays, usually marked by the joy and meaning of being together as a community, is changed and recast because you are watching this on a screen out of concern for the health of all our members, with most other synagogues following suit. We can't lose sight of how different and unwelcome this is, but we can also not for a moment fail in our responsibility to keep ourselves and others safe to the best of our ability. Even if it costs us a holiday together, it is an extension of our Jewish values to land on the side of caution so we might fulfill the Torah's words, v'chai bahem, to live with our Jewish tradition and its commandments. Difficulties have never put an end to our Jewish story. Only passivity and ambivalence could do that. Attempting to meet this huge challenge, the High Holy Days, without being together in person has been met with anything but passivity. This unwelcome COVID era has become an outlet for Jewish creativity, pushing the boundaries for sure, with an eye toward continuity and connection that so many have embraced occasionally or daily. We can only remind each other that we are in this together, and we will look back on this time saying we did what we could individually and as a community to help. And ironically, we will have more specific memories of these holidays than many others because of how unique they are. More specific memories of this strange and destabilizing year than others. And some of those memories will be of the good that came out of the bad. And there has been plenty of bad. Do you want a reminder? Probably not. Are you going to get one? Yep. Way back when 2020 started, there were consuming Australian brush fires. British royals Harry and Meghan quit. Mr. Peanut was killed off. Much, much worse, Kobe Bryant, Chadwick Boseman, Tom Seaver, and the greatest teacher of Talmud in the world, Adin Steinsaltz, and more are gone. There were murder hornets in Washington state. It was 100 degrees in Siberia. A Saharan sandstorm crossed an ocean and affected our weather here. A hurricane took aim at us and missed, and 2 were almost in the Gulf of Mexico at the same time. And more recently, deadly fires took precious lives and consumed millions of acres in the western United States. And all that, except for the loss of life, seems to pale in comparison to the stories of the summer, which is supposed to be a time to regroup and maybe relax. The first is the still hard to fathom, how did we get here ongoing waves of COVID-19, with hot spots flaring up and then receding with no end to it in sight? A public tired of staying home and, let's face it, in large part, done with the virus before it is done with us. No one will ever put aside or completely in the rearview mirror what it means and eventually what it meant to live through a worldwide pandemic. Your prayer and mine these holidays is that it should end soon, and it should be the last one, whether or not that is an appropriate hope in our fully interconnected world. Who would have thought that as we sat around Zoom Passover Seders, we would still be Zooming on these high holy days? We thought it would be weeks or a couple of months at the most. We want our lives back, but we have to safeguard ourselves and each other to get there. In the midst of all that has been lost or missed, we have also seen connections made, concern expressed, care delivered, and people really watching out for each other. It should not take a pandemic for us to realize how difficult it is for people, even in better times, to feel less isolated, and our individual roles and communal responsibility to make those connections happen. I struggle with the term silver lining, with 200,000 Americans dead, 1 million worldwide, and tens of millions of cases around the world. Yet seeing and being the good in the midst of so much pain, heartbreak, and sadness is a Jewish and a human responsibility. It is, many days, what keeps us going. COVID is the main story of 2020, but in ways that are connected and unconnected to it. The other is an earthquake that brewed beneath the surface for decades, even centuries, but erupted not only with fury, but with pulsating energy, personal risk, and a final result that has not yet been achieved. Talk and action beyond COVID, where we had time and energy for it, centered on racial justice here, and it is a call and a movement that has reverberated around the world. We are a community that looks to educate, maintain, and meaningfully engage in specific Jewish tasks, rituals, services, holidays, and responsibilities. And we are a community that also looks beyond ourselves, in keeping with what is a foundational Jewish teaching for all of us. All lives matter, and if some lives, including Black lives, have mattered less due to the mistakes and sometimes violently misguided prejudices of others, and the subtle ones of which we may also at times be guilty, then it is our job, it is our Jewish task to participate in correcting that. At a minimum, we must affirm that discrimination and the abuse it leads to should be eliminated, and that doing so is in keeping with the Judaism that guides our B'nai Torah community. We must say and we must know their names: George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, Freddie Gray, Tamir Rice, Michael Brown, Eric Garner, Trayvon Martin, and many more, too many more. We pray regularly that our brave law enforcement officers and first responders will do their important job safely and well. We will insist that race play no role in preventing equal treatment, equal protection, and equal opportunity for every individual to pursue their potential and their dreams. Our move to online services and teaching has taught me many things. Look into the camera as often as you can. Don't wear busy patterns, not a problem today. Expect the occasional glitch. Put on some pants, or at least shorts. And of course, unmute yourself. It also reminded me that attention spans are short even when eye contact is possible, and they are even shorter when it is not. So let me conclude with 3 short texts, one from a hero, one from my friend, and one from the Talmud. Carry them with you, and they will carry you, I promise, and make the burden of anxiety a little lighter, and the hope for healing and wholeness shine a little brighter. Congressman John Lewis, who died in September and was part of the founding generation of civil rights leaders in the United States, drove home the same message throughout decades of nonviolent protest and personal risk, eventually becoming an inspiration to his colleagues, constituents, and millions of aspiring citizens, even across party lines. They are words that were written in connection to the work of his life, but can also inspire a positive perspective for other struggles as well. He tweeted in 2018, "Don't get lost in a sea of despair. Be hopeful. Be optimistic. Our struggle is not the struggle of a day, a week, a month, or a year. It is the struggle of a lifetime." The second text, from a beautiful sermon built around Louis Armstrong's song, "Wonderful World," that my friend Rabbi Feldman gave just last Rosh Hashanah. Let us remember that prayer is only the beginning. Judaism is a faith of action and reaction. Our prayers are never the goal, but rather tools to lead us to act, making the world right again, fighting hatred and discrimination, protecting and honoring the earth and all who dwell upon it, honoring God and all of God's creations, nurturing the love that is in the world. That is the goal. If we could do more of these things in the new year, that would make our world much more wonderful. But I would need to ask him, I would want to ask him, even now, even with COVID, even with social upheaval, even with everything we are dealing with in the natural and man-made world, can the beginning of this Jewish year really be wonderful? I have his wisdom and my many great and precious memories of his kindness and selfless friendship to guide me. But my answer to this question comes from our Talmud. The Talmud can be dense and convoluted. It can at times seem like holy and even unholy chatter without end, discussions and arguments unfolding often without resolution. In other words, it can seem very Jewish. Yet once in a while, it tells us exactly what we need to hear to inspire hope in this specific moment. And having been around some 1,500 years, that is a pretty incredible thing for it to be able to do. Here is what I want to ring in your ears as the last hours of Rosh Hashanah 5781 begin to tick away. Rabbi Yitzchak said, "Any year that is poor and troubled at its beginning will be made rich at its end." So may it be for us. For those who have experienced searing loss, making a hard year border on unbearable. In our homes, which we have sought to make places of safety, but also of prayer and learning. For our community, which has done so many acts of kindness and which has stuck together even at a distance and yearns to be back together in person. and will be when the time is right. For our country, fractured, divided, struggling, yet also up to the challenge of righting wrongs of the past and present through activism, attentiveness, concern, and free, fair, and unhindered elections. And for a world that is facing the same threat together, united in the hope that we can return to lives of blessing, even as the work will continue to ensure the blessings we are deeply grateful for will be spread far and wide to those who lack them. With God's help and through all of our efforts, a year that began troubled will be made rich, fulfilling, and memorable, not just for the bad, but also for ever increasing good. Shana Tova.